Hello, hello, and welcome to the newest episode of Borderline Podcast Disorder. It's Levi here. I hope you had a good week and a good weekend. Um, I've had some health issues this week, so I haven't felt as good um, as I would have liked to. But it's been a it's been an okay week if you ignore that. If you take away the problems, the health problems I had. I think there was like a apparently there's like a bug going around, and I think I catch it. I was struggling with my just like some stomach pain, and it was quite um, a little bit painful, but it was more just inconvenient, and it took me away from being able to do much, stuff outside the house. But I feel actually as I'm recording this, although I've been sleeping throughout the entire day because I couldn't sleep too well last night. I feel probably the best I felt in a few days, which is good, and I'm super happy about that. Um, yeah, it's been a pretty busy week. Otherwise, with work and I've been reading actually a couple of books this week, which was pretty cool. One of them being the Eli Sharabi's book called Hostage, which was only launched on Thursday, and today it's Saturday. I've almost finished it. It's a very good read, um, and I've also had the absolute pleasure and honor to speak with Hayder. The man that I've interviewed for this podcast for this week's episode. We've been meant to do this episode months ago. Yeah, very very. I don't say very very long time ago, but a very long time ago. And he's got a busy schedule, and then sometimes I think that in one occasion I might have had to be the one who had to cancel and reschedule, but we managed to have the time to record this, and what a pleasure it's been, and what an honor as well. I you'll get to speak with you'll get to hear Hayder, but it's something that I mentioned earlier in the conversation with him. I was like, this is the closest I'll be to winning a BAFTA, or at least the closest I've been so far. Because he was like, "Hey, don't be too hard on yourself. You never know, what's going to happen." But I was like, "Okay, fine. Well, this is the closest I've ever been to not even winning, but to a BAFTA altogether. Having a BAFTA winning producer on the podcast, and for a brilliant movie, by the way. I watched the movie actually earlier today as I was again still bedbound and I wasn't feeling too well. I've managed to put the movie on, and it was great. Such a brilliant movie. I felt quite a few of the emotions, and as someone who used to the movie is called Rock Paper Scissors, and I again it's based in Ukraine. Since the Russian invasion started, it's just again one little. I want to say it's just one very little kind of like a part of the full story. But what a story! It's based on a true story as well. But the whole again watching what I was meant to say before I got distracted by my own train of thoughts is that having been to Ukraine for so long, as a child and as a teenager, and having almost like lived between, Romania and Ukraine for years, it was the acting, the people there, they genuinely reminded me of what it was like, having Ukrainian mates, having and again, because also we've only been to, or like we used to go around like smaller cities in what, north, south, well, west, southwest of Ukraine, near the border with Romania. Um, yeah, a few things that I was looking at the movie. I was like, oh, I know this behavior. Like I understand this, and I have it's kind of like I had a mate like this, and yeah, wonderful movie. Gives you a lot of emotions. I'd say different emotions. To me, it was again different emotions. I um, felt. It depends. Sometimes I cry very easily. Sometimes I don't cry at all, regardless of how, you know real, or like regardless of what it's in front of me. Um, but this again, this movie, it got me on that, verge of feeling like, crying. Um, but yeah, great movie, and I must say it again. What a huge pleasure and honor to have Hayder on to just talk about him and his, how he got to where he is today, and to talk about what is happening next. And he's also been we've also been discussing about we've also been discussing, or like I've also got to ask him questions about his time in Ukraine, because actually after the BAFTA awards, I think it was earlier this year. Yeah, he was, because it's 2025. Yeah, earlier this year, he ended up going to Ukraine, and I remember looking through his like stories on social media. Going through the alarms, and having to go to like bunkers and stuff like this, and it was interesting. And again, that talking to someone who's, on the outside, someone who's safe and sound in London. Well, as safe as one can be in London, given the circumstances. But obviously not the city in a country at war. And to watch the stories from Hader was just eye opening. Like I have a few memories, related to what it was like in 2014, 2015. um, but it was nothing like it. And you could see as well, like, when he would wake up and when he would go back to sleep and stuff like that, depending on the time that the story was shared. And then again, I get to ask him some questions about it, and you'll get to hear it. And I think I think I've talked enough. I think I said enough as an introduction for the episode, for myself, for everything, and I'll just let you enjoy the my conversation with Hader, and I'll catch you near the end. Okay, talk soon. Enjoy. Okay, so Hader, how's it going, brother? So good to see you, man.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me, Levi. Thanks. Good to see you too.
I haven't seen you again in person. We have kind of like touched on it a little bit um, before we started recording. I haven't seen you for like almost 2 years. No, a year and a half to 2 years. Ever since when we met in person, basically.
Yeah, I think it's been about a year. It's so great to be able to do this to, finally. Like I know we've been kind of like speaking about doing it, but it's so good to be able to kind of get down into it and kind of get to it. It's been great to see like you've been doing the comedy and so on and so forth. That's pretty cool.
I mean, look, like I think you've had a very busy schedule, so I have uh, I'm very grateful for you to take the time in the first place to do this. So that I feel like I have to address that from the very beginning of the conversation. But yeah, well, again, I know you've been busy because I've been following you and I've been following your work. But now let me ask you, how are you? How's things with you? What have you been up to?
Good. Yeah, no, things have actually been very busy, to be honest with you. I've been doing a lot of work around the film that I had recently pushed out into the world, which has been like it's been received really well, and the opportunities that have come off the back of that has been great. Been traveling to different countries to speak to different types of people, both from a professional perspective, from personal perspective. It's just been a really fruitful year, actually. Yeah.
That's good. And then now for to have like a lead to basically ask you the question before we start delving into more details. Who is Hayder? For anyone who say he was just like so keen to start play press to press play before they've read the bio, or anyone who doesn't know you, how would you introduce yourself? I guess how do you introduce yourself actually when you go to those events and speak?
No, I mean, I guess if I was to kind of put it into a nutshell, so my name is Hayder Rothschild Hoozeer. I'm a film producer based in the UK. I'm a BAFTA award-winning film producer based in the UK. I made a film called Rock, Paper, Scissors, which has had an incredible reception globally. It's about a young boy and his father who've set up a makeshift hospital at the front line of the Ukrainian invasion. It's based on a true story. It's a war thriller, and we've had a lot of success off the back of that film. But I also have a slate of other films that I'm producing. I do a lot of work with cinema of wonder. So I look to do a lot of films that help uh, bring an escapism to people who might be facing some level of hardship, or to have a sense of inspiration or wonder in the films that they see, to be able to kind of feel something outside of their day to day and to have experiences that enriches their understanding of the world. So that's primarily how I function. I have a production company called Who's Here Films, which functions as a play on the name of my surname, but also as a center point for all the work to kind of go through and to work with incredible talent across all the different spectrums of talent, from producers, writers, directors, uh, all sorts of different types of people. So that's essentially who I am. um, I'm I was born in the UK, but I'm of Mauritian descent. So for anybody who doesn't know Mauritius, it's a tiny little island off the coast of Madagascar. Madagascar is a real country. It's not a film with just animated animals dancing and singing. Because I get that a lot. A lot of people are like, "What? Madagascar? Like the movie?" It's like, yeah, but also like the country. So
I have to say that, sorry to interrupt you, but I have a huge amount of hope that the people who listen to this podcast know that Madagascar is a real country. I feel like I have to to address that, but again, that's just my hope. Please continue.
yeah, yeah, the world's a big place. You know, it's surprising at you know, I suppose not many people realize that it's you know it's so far away and it's such a small place in the well, it's not actually a small place in the world, but
No,
it's
because I
far.
was going to say the reason why I know of Madagascar, although I love the movie, the first one is one of my favorite movies. But the reason why I know is because what to following some certain standard. I remember learning at school that it's one of the biggest, or like it's the biggest island. Like if you ignore, I think the Australia, which is like a continent or something like that. But anyway, yeah. So I know, I basically won, or like because I was studying for a competition in geography in Romania, and one of the questions was what's the biggest island, and I said Madagascar, and I had to, and I've learned about it, and I said Madagascar, and that's one of the questions that got me a trophy in the third grade, which I hold dearly to this to this moment.
Nice. This is, and look at the full circle moment. Now you know. Now you know Madagascar, but Mauritius is near to Madagascar. It's almost the same place, but it's not.
So, because you're talking about you're born in England. Which part of UK or like England were you born and live in, or have
So
lived, if you've
actually,
moved around?
I kind of look at my life in chapters, not like the chapters that you see on Instagram where it's like chapter 33, chapter 25, but more so as in there is a portion of my life at the start of my life when I was a child up until maybe like 11. I grew up in a place called Wisbech, which is in Cambridgeshire, which is in the east of London, the east of England. It's probably about two hours away from London. And after that, I spent for more of my most of my life I've spent in Bedford, in Bedfordshire, which is about an hour away from London. And then I came to London for the third chapter of my life, I lived in like mostly like Ealing, West London. I came to study. Basically, I came for study. I went
Mm.
to a film school called Met Film School in 2010, and that was I've basically lived in London since then.
Okay, now what drew you to the film industry? Like, how was that your first, I guess, expressionism, or like form of expressionism?
I mean,
As a
that's a really great question, actually. In some ways, it was a form of expressionism. It was allowed, like similarly to the kinds of films that I want to make. It for me because I had quite a turbulent childhood and a turbulent like start to my life. Film and cinema really allowed me to feel something that wasn't my current day to day. It allowed me to have a sense of escapism. It allowed me to be whoever it was that the filmmaker wanted me to be. Even if it was only for like 90 minutes or for 2 hours or whatever it was, being able to have those experiences and to have those perspectives allowed me to really kind of get through a lot of the problematic part of my life in a way that that gave me a lot of hope and a lot of inspiration. So for me, film to me essentially saved me and saved my life in some way. So it just made sense that I would want to go and kind of immerse my entire life but in that and to create film and to be able to tell these stories and to pass it on to the next generation. So for me, storytelling just allowed me to understand things outside of my own existence, it allowed me to see other cultures and to feel fantasy and thrill and sadness and melancholy and joy and all these different things. And I think it's, for something to be able to have that kind of effect on you, it just feels like it's something far bigger than any of us. And it just made sense to me that that is exactly what I want to do. So I've been wanting to do, it's been a dream. Doing film was a dream that I had from a very young age, and I pursued it as much as I could. It's taken me probably like 15 years to get to where I am today. And it's like hard graft as well, like it's a difficult job. It's a lot of freelance elements of work as well. So, and there's no clear defined route for it. So if you want to be a doctor, you can go to school, you go to university, you go train for 7 years in whatever, like you get your doctorate, you become, there's like a clear path, but with film
Yeah.
and television, it's like you make your own path.
And I guess, like you said, it's much more. It fluctuates a lot more, right? Because you don't see it as almost like a step ladder. Where like, okay, I'll do this for a couple of years. It's almost like, and again, that's just my perception. So please, give me like tell me what you think about it. But I feel like, it's not the case of, oh, if I it's almost like a sure thing, because oh, I'm gonna work in this position for 3 years, and then something when something comes up, I'm gonna start applying. You can see that, oh, I'm moving up. But now it's almost like you're moving with the hope that, or with the, I'm not even the hope, I'd say it's more with the belief that what you're doing is gonna take you up, but you don't know that, right? Like you don't
No,
know how
yeah,
the final product is gonna be.
absolutely. I completely agree with you. It's one of those things where, like, I think at the heart of what you do, you need to have that self belief and trust that if you keep pushing and pushing, that you'll get to where you want to get to. And I think it's tough, right? Because there'll be times where you sit there and you think, you know, maybe this isn't right, or this isn't going anywhere, or you know, you look at your friends who aren't doing the same thing as you, or you look at your family, or like maybe there's levels of pressure from family or friends where people are settling down, or they've got stability. I've got friends of mine who are buying houses now, and they have family and they're getting kids, and disclaimer, I'm not in a position to do any of those things yet, but you know we have like checkpoints, I think, and I think that's really important to kind of appreciate what those checkpoints are, and to kind of be aware of the journey of what we're taking. Is It's like it's less about the destination and more about the journey. And I think that's probably the most exciting part of the process with filmmaking, is like you just never really know what, if you make a decision to do something now, you never really understand how far it can go, or how where work who it can impact. And I think that's part of the excitement of making films, is that you make a short film, and all of a sudden it's now impacted global, like, politics. And you have the wildest of people have seen your film, and it's kind of, how. That's these are the little moments, that you have to really kind of be present for, I guess. Like, you take it in and you're like, cool, this is what this looks like now, and this is what this looks like now. And I suppose when you look back, if you look back at some of the journey you've taken so far, you can look back at some of that stuff and you'll realize, like, oh, that all now has that in hindsight. They always say hindsight is 2020, right? Like, it's very easy to look back at
Yeah.
something and realize where that sits, but when you're in it, you kind of just have to just that's much to what you were saying. You have to have that belief and that trust, and that in yourself, in knowing that this is what you want, and this is no one else can tell you how that's going to be except yourself.
And you see, because you mentioned something. You mentioned how you, well, as a kid, you were drawn into film because you had some trouble of your own, or like you had some hardship of your own. And then the reason why I'm circling back to that is because, like, now you and I want to kind of like have a big reveal and talk about how great things are now. But before we kind of like build up to that, I'm just basically, my point was, so you saw this sort of, I want to say, like almost like escapism, is that the word, or escapism, yeah, in
Escapism, yeah.
in escapism, yeah, in the film. And then you actually decide to have a career in it. And like I said, from moving to London, going to university, studying, and then working and doing all this like hard work that sometimes, like you said, you see your friends on much more clearer, or like much more the paths that are much easier to draw, or like the checkpoints that are much easier to follow.
Yeah.
um how did that feel, at times? Because again, you're kind of like, now you went from, oh, this is almost like, I love films because of the feel good, sort of like the idea of like not thinking about my own reality, but now it's your life, it's your career.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's. Yeah, I feel very blessed to be able to say that this is my full-time career. There's sometimes it's quite funny when I speak to some other people who aren't in the film industry. Muggles, you speak to muggles who aren't in the film industry, who are kind of out and about doing proper jobs, as I like to joke. But when you speak about film to them, they're like, oh, okay, that's cool. So that's a hobby, or what do you do for your day job? What do you do as your, how do you live and earn money and whatnot? And I'm like, oh, no, this is my day job. This is my life. This is my career, and I feel very blessed to be able to say that because, I suppose much like a lot of different people, it's a very difficult industry to try and get into because it's unconventional, as we've spoken about. There's not a clear route into the industry, and it does require some tenacity and some faith in your efforts, in your work, in your dream, because it will get rocked and it will get shaken, and you'll be challenged on whether this is even the right thing. Because I started off as a runner some 15 years ago, and for anybody that's listening that might not know, a runner is the person who carries the bags, makes the tea. You're driving around. You're the person that moves things around. If someone needs to get a chair and bring it over here, or if things need to have, so, one of the actors needs a coffee, you have to go and it has to be a coffee from Starbucks or Gales or something really crazy because they have very specific. I don't think there was a Gales in 15 years ago, but like these, they only want red M&Ms. You have to go and buy the packet of all like 7 packets of M&Ms and pick out all the colors, and that's the person who does that.
Yeah, yeah,
I would
yeah.
drive. I would drive vans. I would drive all the different vehicles to kind of for the different departments. Like the art department was one of the hardest jobs I did because that is like moving house every day. If you've ever had to move house, you'll understand how hell that is. And to do that every day, you're
Wow.
moving sofas and chairs and tables and stuff that you would use in a set decoration. Like you would be moving that on and off the vans, and camera department, it's all heavy equipment, and all these different types of roles, and as a runner, and some of those jobs some of that's very unglamorous, right? Like I remember there was a point in time where I was driving a van with a liquids only toilet on the back of the van, and we were filming by the coast in Margate. So that was the only toilet for miles for the film crew. And I won't go too deep into it, but I let your imagination run wild when I mentioned that it's a liquids only toilet. You don't that should be that's You don't want, like, if it's not liquids only, it's a really really bad time for whoever needs to clean that up. It's a
Wow.
malfunction. So
Yeah.
you know I've done some pretty shitty, excuse the pun, jobs.
No, no, absolutely. I
So
didn't even know that exists.
oh yeah, oh yeah,
Oh,
oh I know that.
wow.
It does exist. I assure you. I've
I
seen that. I've
I
seen that
believe you.
shit
Oh
up
God.
close. Excuse me for saying.
Wow. No, no,
But
of
no,
course, of
so
course. Please
so
continue.
you start from the ground up, and I really like, I started from the ground, and I did that for many years and climbed my way through the production office. I learned how to navigate through the different roles in production, and I think the key thing for me was that I was very enthusiastic because it was my dream was so clear to me that this is what I wanted to do. And the industry kind of it tests you in that way, right? Like they test you that a lot of people aren't really cut out for that sort of thing because you are expected to do those things. You have to do your time. You do those things, and as you climb through the ranks, it all makes sense as soon as you get higher and higher up, because then you understand what is expected from those roles and how to kind of manage those different kinds of working processes on the production. You know, it's not about ego. It's not about someone needs to do this and then someone the higher up. They don't need to do any of those things. It's like everybody puts in together to make the best possible film that they can. And I tell you what, like over that time period, it was very, very hard. You ask me how it feels. Part of me was very excited because I'm on a film set. You know, this is the
Yeah.
dream. I'm working on a film set. You know, I've worked on film sets with Jessica Alba. I've worked on film sets with Samantha Morton, and like, you know, in some of these film sets are, you're in places that just regular people don't ever really get to go to because it's like private. It's private for a specific, you know, like we filmed in churches. We filmed in like I'm trying to think of like race tracks. You know, we film in like all these different elements and stuff like that in studios where they filmed the Bond movies. You know, water tanks where you think like, you know, you think, oh, you know, like Pirates of the Caribbean is shot at sea. No, it's not. It's shot in a studio in a water tank. You see the scale of these things, and you go to these sets and you see all these design, this set design for. I remember I walked onto the set of Maleficent one time, which was a film with Angelina Jolie, and it's a fantasy movie. And you go onto this set, and it's like built this huge set, and you're walking in it, and you're like, oh, I'm in this village, this fantasy village that has been burnt by a dragon. That makes sense, you know, and this very exciting.
Wow.
So the feeling was was very inspiring for me because it was like, wow, I'm really like I'm living the dream, even though I'm cleaning toilets and I'm making tea,
Yeah.
but I'm here, I'm on the set, you know, bottom of the top. That's how I used to look at it.
Wow. And you know what? The way you say it makes again, it makes it make a lot of sense. And you know, the way I think about it is that you or like because I don't want to say you, but and I'm curious to see your perspective on this. But my thoughts are that there is not such a thing as a job that's like it's a perfect job. It's almost you need to find a job that's the worst things are worth doing still, you know. And it's almost like
Yeah.
you're saying where, you know, you see yourself, you're where you want to be. You're not doing what you want to do, but you are where you want to be. And you know, like I said, and when you're driving to those places, you're not necessarily, you know, driving perhaps your own car, or you're not being driven, you know, so that you can like have a bit of a rest before you start working. You're the one who's doing the driving, but at least you can see why that matters in the future, and you can see that, you know what, I still love this. And I think about it in the respect of, like, you know, when again with comedy, I love doing comedy. I don't love traveling to a comedy show. I don't love traveling back home from a comedy show. I don't love sending loads of emails. I don't love, you know, the admin part. Like, I love the things that I love. I don't find the bigger joy than doing my creative work. I
Absolutely.
don't,
Yeah. I mean,
you
you've done
know,
it. Like exactly. You've nailed it. Like, you've nailed it on the head. I think with everything that you're describing and how you've summarized it. I think it's absolutely right. I think if you can have that perspective where, like, even though it's not the best physical job that you might be doing, this forms part of the grander vision and the grander dream and the grander movement of what you're trying to do. And that's kind of part of the process, and why I think I've had the opportunities to kind of grow over that time period, because this is 15 years worth of graft, 15 years worth of work, because that what I've described is only a very small portion of that, because of that level of attitude and that understanding that, people think that you come into the film industry, you just become a director, and the reality is it's like there's a there unless you've come from a lot of wealth and you have a lot of money behind you, where someone just says, okay, here you go, here's £3 million, go make a film, you know usually you have to kind of build up to that point where you can understand the industry a lot more and understand how these things function and what these things look like and how do you get to that point, because all of these things are important. The film cannot run without those people. You can't make a film without those runners. You can't make a film without any of the production team or the camera department or the art department or the costume department. All of those elements exist to serve and function of the storytelling in the film. And having that opportunity to understand that quite early on and doing those different roles allowed me to progress into the industry further and further, because as I was growing into the production team, I knew that I wanted to be a producer. That was my end vision and end goal. Like, I was always inspired by the creativity and the talent of other people. I would meet directors, or I would meet writers, or any kind of capacity of people, and it would be really inspiring. If these people if I can see their vision, or I can see their creativity, or I can see their enthusiasm and their lust for life, for me, it gets me really excited. And I'm like, look, I need to work with you. I need to, whatever it is that you need to do, I'm going to help you do it. And it becomes a little bit of like, oh, I've got this screenwriter and this director, I'll put them together. Or it becomes a bit like Football Manager, where you start to kind of assemble a different team, and you start to kind of in like develop these projects and these ideas, like, from not just from a nuts and bolts perspective of like hiring the team, getting the locations, getting the kit equipment, but also from a creative perspective. When you're developing it, one of the biggest things as a producer that I have, that is part of my role, is that I have an understanding of what the audience is. Like, who's the audience? Who is this going for? How can they interpret what you're trying to achieve? Like, if this is the impact that you're looking to have, how can we make your intention as clear as possible? And what are the other alternative versions that might exist as a form of perspective? And to kind of help build and balance that as a puzzle. It's like a puzzle piece. You look at most films, if you want this to happen, then you need to have this kind of a setup. You always see it in different films. It's like, if you want this thing as a payoff, you need to have this as a setup. If you want Jack and Rose to fall in love, you need to have Rose not love whoever she is in the first instance at the start of getting on the ship of the Titanic. You see what I mean? Like, you need to have like the different elements of
Yeah.
the things that pay off. But yeah. There's a lot. There's a lot. It's a big journey.
So, you kind of read my mind there, because my next question was, why a producer? Like, what made you want to be a producer? And now you've addressed that. However, I guess now I want to know, when did you figure out that that's what you want to do? Was it through university? Was it before that? Like, at what point, when once you started, I guess, yeah. At what point have you decided that, oh, actually, I don't want to be a writer, I don't want to be a director, I don't want to be an actor, I want to be a producer?
You know what? I can pinpoint it down to the exact person and the exact moment when that happened, and I'll illustrate it for you, actually, because as with any young kid, everybody wants to be a director. Everybody wants to be. You see a Steven Spielberg film, you see like a Scorsese film, or you see any of these other great directors, and everybody wants to be a director, and that's fair. Most people, that's their only understanding of a film. You see a film, you only know the director, or maybe you only know the actors. So I wanted to direct when I was younger, and I remember there was a person that I'd met who was also wanting to direct, and I saw their work. And I remember seeing their work, and I felt very, very inspired. I was like, wow, this is incredible. And two things happened in that moment. which was like catalyzed into the what is now my life. Like this is how like these small elements, how that has had such a huge impact. I'll tell you the two things that happened. One was, let's call it, one was internal thoughts and one was an external thing. So the first thing that happened was that I was incredibly inspired by this person, their talent, their ability and their skill, their work. And in that moment, I thought to myself, I don't think I'll ever be this good. Internally, I was like, holy shit, I could work twice as hard and only be half as good, right?
Wow.
That was an internal thing that was happening. It was like, wow, this person is like, we're both the same age, the same sort of level of experience, but like just innately you're this naturally incredible, right? So I would have to go and learn to be what you are naturally good, right? Internal. External, I was thinking, wow, you are so talented and so incredible. I have to work with you. Like, I want to collaborate with you. I want to work with you. But if you look at most films, there aren't two directors, unless they're brothers or sisters, you know. There's only
Yeah.
one of there's you're competing, you know. As a director, it's highly unlikely that you'll work with another director. It's almost impossible that you would ever work with another director. You know, if you're a cinematographer, it's unlikely that you'll work with another cinematographer. If you're an editor, it's unlikely that you'll work with another editor. The point being is that I could spend the rest of my life competing with all of the incredible talent out there, or I could
Hmm.
spend the rest of my life collaborating with all of the incredible talent out there. Because the natural feeling that I had, I was drawn to this person, and I was like, man, like we need to work together. Like I've got some ideas, and if you put it together with your ideas, and maybe we can make it into this, and then, you know, like if we can get all these things into place, then we're
Wow.
working together, you know, rather than competing. And it was in that moment, that's what I'm saying. Externally, I was like, wow, I'm inspired. Internally, I'm like, shit, I'm not gonna be this good. I am not this good. So
But
yeah,
sorry, go on.
that was very. I won't give you their name because if they ever listen to this, you know, I don't want them to kind of get wind that this is them. They don't. I don't even think they will never know. They don't know that this is the impact of that person. I don't think they'll ever know that they've had this much of a butterfly effect, ripple effect from just a conversation,
I
just from a
mean,
meeting.
yeah, but it still sounds like, again, it's kind of, it's about how did you perhaps shape up your mind even in like in such a way to see it at the time that, oh, okay, because I feel like that could have gone in many different directions. You could have used that sort of, oh, I don't think I can be as good, and you could have just been like, no, maybe none of this is for me. You could have, again, there could have been so many different alternatives to this, but
Yeah,
then it sounds like you were kind of like, okay, so how do I make this work for me? So, and how did you come up to such a, such, I guess, mentality? How did you come to such, train of to have this like sort of like train of thoughts? And is this how you see it now in hindsight, or is it how you even saw it at the time?
that's a really great question. I think the way I would answer that is it's there's two processes happening at that point in time for me. There is the thoughts, and then there is the feeling. And I think when those two things come into play, the feeling was like a spark. It was I was excited. You know, I wasn't threatened. I wasn't ashamed. There wasn't any kind of ego. It was excitement. You know, there was like a bursting emotion of like, wow, this is real. You know, like you are a real person doing really good stuff. This is the sort of stuff that I would see. from a distance. You watch a film on TV or film in the cinema, and you're like, wow, that's incredible. And now you're speaking to somebody who can make that real, especially at that time. We were quite young at the time. I think we were like 18, 19,
Wow.
maybe, maybe even 20, but like, I always knew I wanted to do film, but it was at like 18, 19, 20 where I realized that producing was definitely something that I preferred to do and something I was very excited to do. And from the mentality point of view, it just kind of to me clicked. It just made sense. It's like, wow, I could spend the next 15 years getting good at this thing, or I can spend the next 15 years meeting all of those people who are good at this thing and working with them, and it's so diverse, like I could, as a producer, I have the opportunity to kind of make any film that I want, really. If I want to make if I want to make a rom-com tomorrow, or if I want to make an action thriller, I want to make an animated film, I have the opportunity to kind of collaborate and help make that real, make that true. Whereas maybe if I was a director, you kind of look at like Wes Anderson. I think he's got golden handcuffs now, like he can only make the films that he makes. I think if he ever tried to step away from that, I think it might be
Mm.
difficult for him if he wanted to experiment and try something different. He's kind of put himself, he's worked himself into a corner by making his films so iconic and so visually aesthetic, and so, his style is so defined. How do you do something? How do you deviate from that? So for me, the thought process, and this all happened at that time. Honestly, that was how I looked at
Yeah.
it. It was like, I looked at it as like at that age. I was like, what, right? I could, I, I don't. Maybe there was a point in there where I was like, I don't really know what kind of films I want to make, but I can. That's okay as a producer. That's okay, because I did I remember spending quite a long time, maybe in like 2020, kind of assessing, as everybody did, looking in the mirror and be like, what am I doing? And kind of thinking about, does a producer have a distinctive voice? Does a producer, if you look at a producer's body of work, is there a through line in what they're trying to say, or is there a through line in the kind of films that they champion? You know, but even over the period of 15 years, it's something that you learn, and I think it's, like I say, it's twofold. It's an emotional process too. You can never underestimate the power of your gut feeling. I think a lot of people can have a lot of insecurities about their gut feeling. I think, a lot of people talk about this as to, 15 years is a long time. I would say it's only in the last year, really, that things have really started to build up momentum. You know, from the outside world, it might look as though it's an overnight success, but they don't see the 15 years of work. And also, that's a long time to wait. It's not waiting, but it's a long time to go before it starts to fruition. You know, some people might give up at the 10-year mark. If you're grafting for 10 years and it doesn't feel like there's any kind of huge progression towards what you're trying to achieve, you 10 years, 11 years, 12 years, 13 years, at what point do you keep, do you sit down and think, well, is this going to work out? I don't know, just quite a lot of people might not be able to do that. But my advice is to kind of trust your gut, because if you, in your heart of hearts, believe that this is something that's going to take off, I think that really does drive your consistency in trying to push it. Because, and I imagine it's the same with comedy, but with film and television, you have to drive it. No one's ever going to give you a promotion. That doesn't exist. Like, a promotion? No, no one's going to. Even when it comes to awards, as an example, people think that an award is someone seeing you from far away and giving you a pat on the back. And that's simply not true. You have to build up to that. There's a lot of work that goes into kind of pushing your work and preparing yourself for the moment that they recognize you. So that when they do see you and you do push your film and you do push your success into that limelight, you're ready. You're ready to go. They see all of you. They see who you are. They see you as someone who is ready to receive, so that you can go into the world and start to make something bigger and better.
So now because you mentioned the question that you asked yourself in 2020. Uh, what was the answer to the because you're talking about, which I think it's fair. Everyone must have questioned at least like one thing in their life during an unprecedented year.
Yeah.
But yeah, but for you, what was the answer to that when you were like, again, yeah, what's next for me? What am I doing? Is that also when did you start your own production company?
So the production company was actually quite a recent thing. I think I started it in 2023. And the reason I started that company at that time was I realized that I needed to have a system in place that could receive and deploy funds, that can structurally build a long-term sustainable business around film and television. Something that operates, where people can come and work within, that has its own set of ethos and set of as a vision that I drive, but that anybody who can align with that can come and nurture their talent, their project, their work, their own future and ideas of not just development of projects, but it's a company. If there's anybody who would want to come and understand a little bit more of what it does and how it works in the industry, and it aligns with our ethos and what we're trying to achieve, and then it's an opportunity. It becomes something bigger than just me. So the company exists outside of me, and hopefully it'll exist after me, long after I've gone. It'll have the slate of films and television and projects and people that kind of snowballs into something far beyond just me. And you look at something like Walt Disney. One of the biggest things for me that like really kind of inspires me is, when I talk to people and they're like, oh, you see it out in the world where they're like, oh, what's your favorite Disney movie? Oh, it's Aladdin, it's this, it's Lion King. Oh, let's go to Disneyland, let's go Disney World, or like you go to Primark and it's Disney pajamas, and like it's like, oh, Marvel, my favorite superhero is Marvel, this or Spider-Man or whatever, and like, you know, you see all of these things permeate into everyday lives, and it brings people so much joy and happiness and excitement, and people kind of find community in those things, and like that's Disney is his name. This is Walt
Yeah,
Disney, but it's so synonymous outside of his name now. People will talk about this far beyond of the Disney the man. Disney is now an entity. It's a thing. It exists far beyond what one person could have ever possibly imagined and achieved. And you see, I've seen people with tattoos of Disney characters.
yeah,
You know, you see people spend their life savings for their three kids to go to Disneyland, and it's like,
to
you go
Disneyland.
online onto TikTok and you see them do like reveal videos of them telling their kids that they're going to Disneyland, and it's such a rite of passage, and it's like grandparents taking their grandkids, it's like a thing
Yeah,
that they do, or like people, all these families get together around the TV, or they go into the cinemas to share this moment together as a family watching these films, and it influences the music that people listen to. Like you hear kids listening on repeat the songs from these films, and it's not just kids. It's like adults too. Like you watch, like say, like Marvel. Marvel fundamentally is Disney. Disney bought it and made it
yeah,
into the films that people love for generations to come. So, I think the long-winded answer to your question about the company, I think there was a point that I understood in time that this needs to exist bigger than myself, and I will lead it with the principles and the ethos of what I'm looking to achieve. But I hope that it will attract talent and people and all sorts of different elements to it that help make an impact on the world in that way. Something that far outlives me, and so as a legacy, I guess.
Hmm. Wow, that's a cool. I think that's a cool way of thinking about it, and it's I spoke with quite a few people on the podcast, and they talk about like legacy and about how it's about like kind of a way of leaving something behind. And I think also like even the to be associated with something, because again you gave the example of Walt Disney, it's like that name lives, and it's not again even the person, but like whatever is out there, the Disney thing, like you said, you see like grown up people, with even Disney tattoos, you have people have like the Disney logo, you have people who have like the like Mickey. And also I think you were talking about like grandparents taking their grandchildren, because it's something that you like. I'd say my parents watched Disney movies, and I get to watch Disney movies, and then my kids will get to watch Disney movies, and then we all
Yeah,
watched it in different times, and it meant probably different things for us. But yet, you can bond over that sort of thing. You can, again, you can all go like, oh, I love that, and again, for might be for different reasons. It could be for totally different movies. I don't know what the future holds, but
yeah,
that sounds it's a powerful thing to do, and I think it's also it's very meaningful. And now I wanted to ask you, one of the decisions that you've made
yeah.
in the past was to produce a movie called Rock Paper Scissors.
Yes, yes, yeah, yeah.
How did that happen?
Yeah, so with rock, paper, scissors, I would say rock, paper, scissors is probably the most successful project that I've worked on. We won a BAFTA this year for it, which was best British
Congrats
short.
again.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah, it's a short film. It's 21 minutes long, and as I mentioned at the start, it's based on a true story, set in the invasion of Ukraine in 2022. And I came onto this project. Franz Bohm, who is the director, he was at the same film school as the one that I attended, which was the National Film and Television School. I had already graduated from that school, but we had a relationship in the build-up. That we had a. He was in the year. The simplest way of describing it, he would have been in the year below me.
Mm.
So I had already graduated, and he was doing his graduation project. And we had a very good relationship and friendship, because I'd met him previously, and I was watching his work, and I saw how he works, one of the things that I think kind of what I think one of the defining factors of me as a producer is that I have a sharp eye for seeing talent. It's an emotional thing, and it's a mental thing. Like it internally, I can, when I meet somebody, or I see their work, or I can see how they are as a person, I see it. I see the spark, I see the vision, and we really hit it off. He is an incredible director, and Franz had met the person the film was based on previously, and
Cool.
so his name is Ivan. He is the main character of the film, and this is his story. This is the true events of his story. And when he met Ivan, it was under the circumstances where Ukraine had just been invaded, and essentially, if you're a young person over the age of 18, you are expected to fight in the war. I think they call it conscription. And at the
Yes.
time, the UK was as a big ally for Ukraine, and the way that the UK could help Ukraine was that they would bring over all these young 18-year-old boys to the UK, give them proper training, give them British military training. I think the British military is ranked quite highly in the world for their training and their discipline and their tactics and deployment and so on and so forth. So it was one of the things that the UK did for Ukraine was that they'd bring over and train these young men to be able to get, when they're deployed into Ukraine, they have a fighting chance. So Franz met him whilst he was in the UK. They struck up a friendship, and Ivan had disclosed this story to him. Actually, it came about because Ivan had a scar on his leg. And it's also worth mentioning that Franz is in the Navy. He's in the Royal Navy. Or he works for the Royal Navy. So that's the premise of how they would have met. Anyway, Franz brought this story to me, and immediately I was just, I felt the weight of the responsibility of this story. I thought, you know what, the fact that this is the reality for such a young person. You know, he was 18 at the events of the film. He was younger than that. He was 17 in the events of the film, but he was 18 at the point in which he came over and whatnot. And to experience that, to experience life in that way was so profound. And seeing the events as it was unfolding live in Ukraine, you know, the way I would describe it is that there was a sense of duty and responsibility for me and for Franz to make this project. You know, some people will pick up a gun and go fight. Some people will try and give aid. They'll drive trucks into Ukraine to give aid, or some people will go and raise money, or some people will do this. I don't know how to do those things. What I do know is how to make films. And for me and for Franz, the perspective that we wanted to give with this story was that of a civilian, for which Ivan is. You know, the whole point of that storytelling was to see Ivan's perspective as a civilian, because when you look at war movies, usually it's like good guys versus bad guys, you know, soldiers versus soldiers, us versus them. Whereas this film centers on the human cost of war and what that looks like for the individual who's on the ground, who doesn't know. You hear the sound of a plane above you. You don't know if it's a friendly or if it's a foe. You don't know if that's going to be dropping a bomb on you or it's dropping a bomb on them, because you don't know. You're just trying to survive.
Yeah.
You know, in these circumstances, you are presented with a series of unfortunate decisions and choices that you face that kind of influence your survival. And that was fundamentally the focus of telling the story. And I think the reason why we had so much success from that is because we made it very clear from the start for everybody involved. And we didn't make it clear for everybody. Everybody understood that this was not a film about ego. Everybody involved understood the weight of that responsibility. You know, it was never a story where the music composer saw it as an opportunity to show off his ability. It was never an opportunity for the cinematographer to show off their ability. It was never an opportunity for anybody to try and outshine anybody else. Everybody understood that the work that they had to do was for the benefit of the greater good of the storytelling. They understood that this film has so much more, the weight of the storytelling had a lot more than just something that looked cool or was entertaining.
Wow, I see. And then, you know, you've worked on this, um, and this is one of the coolest thing. And I have actually have to say it first. Once again, congratulations on the award. It's very well deserved,
Thank you.
and very what was the word like hardly worked for, or the hard worked for. You know, like it sounds like
Yeah,
again there's been a lot of effort into it, and also I think that the thing that you just mentioned now about how everyone it kind of went like, hey, you're not here to, you know, outshine anybody. We're here to put like the best work that we can together as a unit. It's also something that I absolutely love to hear.
yeah.
Um, and now I was curious during the recording or like during the making, sorry, during the making of the movie. Have you been to Ukraine by this point?
Yeah. So I actually have a relationship with Ukraine prior to the filmmaking, which was part of the reason why it was such a profound story to tell and why I had the responsibility to tell the story. One of my best and closest friends, she was displaced by the war in Ukraine from 2014. 2014, 2012?
Yeah, that's when the Crimea. That's when it started in Crimea. It was 2014.
Yeah.
No, wait.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was 2014.
Yeah, it is 2014. And, she's from Donetsk. So she was displaced from that. And, even with the ongoing conflicts as well to this day, uh, I've experienced that quite personally through her, like the hardships of having her family there, the different, and even, sometimes I would go back with her to see her family and to go support her creative endeavors, because she's Ukrainian and she spent a predominant amount of time in the UK. She's as much British as she is Ukrainian now, I would say. But I'd been to Ukraine quite a few times prior to the invasion in 2022, which only kind of solidified my support and advocacy for Ukraine, because going over there, I think with what I find, and what I find with this war, and what one of the goals of why I keep continue to push this film is, I think people tend to see it as this faraway land that, you know as you see in games like Call of Duty, you see these like environments that you set these games in, and it's like, oh, it's war that's happening in this environment that's so far away. That's like, people don't really care. Not because they are unable to care, but just because it's quite a far away feeling for them, or a far away thought process for them.
Yeah.
But being over there, and I've been to Kiev, I've been to a few different places as well in Ukraine, and like it's like a major European country. You go there, you go to Kiev, it feels like it feels like you're going to Rome, or to Paris, or any other major European city. It's beautiful. The architecture, the history, the different like even the restaurants and the nightlife. Like it's a major European city. So understanding that, then seeing it get destroyed in all the news and media and outlets, and it's just very heartbreaking to see that this sort of thing happens so close to home. So for me, it's a huge responsibility for me to become. I'm acting as an advocate for Ukraine by pushing this film, by trying to help build empathy around the whole process, and kind of give a heartbeat to the headlines. So when people watch this movie, and they have the storytelling. I feel like, one of the things I said in my speech at the BAFTAs was that storytelling shapes how we see the world and each other. You know,
Mm.
I think and I stand by that, and I believe that, because you see in the news 10,000 people displaced, 20,000 missing, or 10. Yeah, I'm just giving these numbers as
Yeah,
an
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
example.
just
Don't
yeah.
take them for fact, but the point that I'm trying to make is that you see all these things, and it's just too much for a human mind to kind of fathom. It doesn't make sense. You can't understand it. You don't understand the level, the level of destruction. 600 drones in 12 hours doesn't mean anything to anybody. You tell the story about a young boy and his father who are caught in this situation, who face real life decisions that you hope that you'll never have to face. And you sit there and you think to yourself, what would you do in those situations? And you build that empathy up through this film so that the next time you read any of these articles or you see anything in the news, there is a feeling, as I said, like there's a heartbeat to the headlines.
Uh, so I'm just trying to think because I don't know if you know, but I used to live between Romania and Ukraine for a few years. So every time, like now, as I was listening to you, I was like, yeah, I get it. It's like, again, like I feel, and I've said it from the very beginning. There wasn't such a thing because a perfect country doesn't exist. But in this circumstance, it's there is still, there are things that are clear to support and to look out for and to again to look to help out with. And my memories of Ukraine, and that's what like my memories even after 2014, going into Ukraine, almost like seeing the change and the sort of how do you call it, this edginess, that even the 'cause again, like also I think people have to understand, and especially because I come from a Romanian parents and Romanian family. Our relationship with Ukraine historically hasn't been the best. Like we haven't been best mates, but they've gotten much better over the years, and um, there was a lot of progress. But now you almost see that they are not being scared and edgy because they think, oh, Romanians don't like us or like we don't like, now it's
Yeah.
actually something else. And it's almost like, and I always, I think of oh God, I can't remember what I've listened to someone talk about it where they were like, it's almost like that. That's like a barricade. That's the last door for, like, that can happen to you, because again, like that can happen to Romania if Ukraine collapses, if Ukraine was
Yeah.
to put the arms down and to lose, then next is Romania and Poland, and then you've got
Yeah.
Germany, and then you've got
Yeah.
France, and this is the kind of stuff, like when you think about it in such a way, you're like, oh, okay, I see it. And yeah, now thinking about my past, and again, I haven't been since, or at least I haven't been anywhere besides of Chernobyl, which is like on the border with Romania. I want to say since 2019 or 2020. Yeah, since before COVID. But there was a clear shift. Like again, from 2014, you could definitely see that people were worried and people were already
Yeah.
trying to conserve, or like to conserve, basically to preserve themselves the best way
But let's
possible.
like I definitely want to talk about that as well because what you're describing is essentially like it's a feeling, like to be able to recognize that feeling and to understand what that to sit in that. I think this is something that a lot of people don't really get the opportunity to do, and I think this is my reason d'être. This is why I exist in this world
Yeah,
now. Is because if I can help emulate that feeling for you as closely as I can, from a human perspective, because that's fundamentally what I believe is the power of filmmaking and the power of storytelling is that if we can humanize certain emotions and thoughts and processes, you can understand that you're that fundamentally you are not alone. There's a collective consciousness that we form part of that people think and feel in this way, and that allows us to be able to build that community, to be able to, and I don't mean, and what I mean by community is like a social think tank, being able to
yeah,
share those
yeah,
those those thoughts and those processes. Just if you yourself can't action it, but you become part of that conversation, then it can help drive action, and that comes from understanding what you might think or feel in that moment. And I think that's part of going back to even when we're talking about like, we're talking about the Disney films and the grandparents and your parents kind of showing you those films and you're sharing those emotions with people, like all of this forms fundamentally, I think, anyway, it's my perspective. This is why I think film is so integrated and so important in life. A lot of people might see it as something that's like entertaining and fun, something in the distance
Mm,
or far away. But I think the reason why it's so celebrated, why people are so, if you see a movie star in the street, why it's such a big deal, is because the impact that it has on our lives and our day to day is so profound. You watch some of these, you watch some of these
yeah,
films that can help us process and understand things in a way that we can start to kind of fathom how things work.
yeah. I agree, and I feel like you said, it's almost again. It's not. It leads you in that direction of, oh yeah, I almost, I get it, or like I understand this. I see it. I see it, and like I think you mentioned it, but perhaps in a different way earlier about like it's the perspective of, you don't know how you would behave in that situation because you haven't been put in that situation, and then now you see the perspective of someone who, because again, to us, like in I guess even living in England, uh, the idea of getting a letter that, oh, you have to, you know, show up for national duty.
Yeah,
It's something that you don't have to think about it. You don't have to think, oh, how would I react to this, because it's not happening.
yeah. Or
But
even
then,
like the sounds as well. I went to Ukraine in May of this year, May 2025, during what was at the time the biggest siege on the country from Russia since the start of the war in 2022. It was 24th of May 2025. I don't think I'll ever forget it because the sounds, the air raid sirens, the sounds of missiles and drones and planes and ships. Well, you can't hear the ships, but like you can hear the missiles, the cruise
yeah,
missiles coming. The sounds, the smells, the feeling and the emotion. For me, it was just a snapshot of what these guys have been living with for over 3 years now. So it was just such an eye-opening experience to go over there and then to meet the people. Like I have so much love for the Ukrainian people because the level of courage that they show, the degree of being able to continue as best as they can with their lives, and to have that sense of identity, to not succumb to the idea of losing that identity, even under the weight and pressure of the wider world. Like there's a version of
yeah,
events where they're just like some parts of the world see they're like, oh, wasn't Ukraine part of Russia once? Like you guys can just make up, and it's just like, no.
uh-huh,
It doesn't work like
yeah,
that. They have like identity and just like the create like they're such a beautiful people. And I myself am not Ukrainian, and you know I think that's part of the strength of why we've had so much success with the film, is because when I went to go over there to speak to the office of the president and to speak to their Ministry of Culture and to share the success of the film with the people of
mm,
Ukraine, I think what they said to me was that if you can understand the plight of our circumstances, then so can everybody else.
yeah. That's very true. That's actually a good point, and I think coming back to the point that you were saying, that you hear sometimes, and I feel like it's something that it was heard as the time has passed. It's like, as in I don't think, at least in my circle of like people who I know, in the first year, it was kind of like it was a clear, oh, Ukraine's got to stand up for itself. And then it went to the point where you'd hear this, argument of like, oh, why can't they just give up? Just they've been Russia once, they just do it again. And like, that's a very simplistic way to look at something that's not simplistic at all. And also, it kind of, it diminishes and it devalues almost like, again, the whole work, even I think even before 2014, of like what Ukraine has done to actually make sure that they don't get to be put in this position
Yeah.
ever again. And I feel like, the fact that, because one of the things that I'd be, okay, and I've seen it from your trip to you. Actually, I've seen it ever since I saw I saw the movie nomination. I've seen your posts, about the nomination for the BAFTA and the movie coming out, and then I even like seeing you in Ukraine, because I think it was.
It's doing those
I
posts
would
as it was
open
happening
up,
during the nighttime. Yeah, like
and I
3
would.
a.m.,
But this is
4
the thing.
a.m.
I was waking up, and the first thing that I would do, like after picking up my phone, I would check your post, like, yeah, check your stories.
Wow.
Because I was just like, this is, because again, this is something that it's almost like it's gotten a bit forgotten. That's how I felt, at the time. And then
Yeah.
now to actually see someone who I know that's there,
Yeah.
it was just like, to me, I genuinely, again, it was at the time where I was like, you know what, I don't want to spend that much time on social media, or like I don't want to, but I would like specifically go and like
Just
type
to
in your
see
like
that what it looks
handle.
like on the ground.
And
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So then that's why, like, now to hear from you, and I also just another question, because I'm aware we're near the end of what I promised you that for how long I would keep you for. But one of
Yeah.
the questions that I want to ask you is, did you know that, were you expecting you for the situation in May to be the way it was, or was it surprising even for you?
The short answer is no. No. Because it is war right now. And I know that sounds very naive to say, like, well, yeah, obviously, you go to a war zone, it's going to be war. But what what nothing can prepare you for the realities of what war looks like, because when you're in the heart of it, because at that time it was a full on siege every day, every night, all throughout all around the clock. I'd spent so many times, so many hours in the bunkers. There were points at time where I'm like sleeping in a corridor with my backpack packed with like my passport, like a change of clothes, power bank,
Mm.
shoes by the door, laces undone. You know, you're sleeping on the floor in the corridor between two walls, and the building is shaking, and it's kind of like you could, like, this is it, this is it. Like
Yeah.
you can hear, you put your head out the window and they tell you not to, and you can see the anti-aircraft, the anti-air defense, like shooting down these drones out the sky, shooting out these missiles. And then you see, like, in the mornings you go around, you walk at like 4 5 a.m. As you exit the bunkers, as you're walking around, and like, some of these aren't even bunkers. Like, some of the time I spent was in a car park underground. It's the
Yeah.
best thing you can get for miles. Or sometimes I'll just be in the corridors of the buildings. I was staying in a high rise building, away from any windows, and you can see it, you can hear it, you can feel it, you can smell it. I don't want to get into too much detail of what that emotion and what that feels like. It's very, I will never ever forget that experience. It almost feels unreal. It almost feels like a movie set. Like, it just doesn't. You
Mm.
just doesn't can't compute the realities of that. So no, I didn't expect that to be that way. In any case, I didn't expect it. At one point, I remember I was in the Ministry of Culture, in the basement of the Ministry of Culture, with the Deputy Minister of Culture, as they are attacking the very buildings that we're in, because that's the government. That's the government
Yeah.
buildings. And during my visit, Ukraine is in martial law. There's a no-fly zone. So to get into Ukraine, you have to travel over the land border. So I went through Poland. It took me 26 hours to get into Ukraine, like door to door. And I remember when I was in, and it's hard to get out. you know, it's very hard to get out once you're in there. It's only there's only like the travel is only every so many days. And I remember being like, you know, no one come. The only tourists in Ukraine. There aren't no tourists in Ukraine at the minute, obviously. So
Yeah.
the only people that were there really who were foreigners were like arms dealers or whatever the official terminology is for that, like defense contractors, as I think is the correct term. You know,
Yeah.
defense contractors, aka arms dealers, foreign diplomats, or like politicians from different countries, generals, army generals from across the world that are brought in. And this guy, who was walking around, you know, at like one of the very few people of color walking around, you know, because like obviously Ukraine has a huge level of tourism generally, but you know, I was walking around, going to all these different meetings. I spoke on their television services, like live TV. I went on, spoke to their government because it was huge. Winning the BAFTA for
Of course.
Ukraine was huge for them because it did two things. One, it shows that there is a level of support outside of Ukraine that understands and sees them because the story is Ukrainian, the actors are Ukrainian, the film language is in Ukrainian. For all intents and purposes, it is a Ukrainian film. We shot it in the UK and we used a diverse crew from all over the world, but primarily the actors were all Ukrainian, you know. So
Mm.
for for this Ukrainian story to be seen and felt globally in this way was monumental for the people of Ukraine because in the state of war and conflict, it's very hard to, especially if you're there and you cannot leave, like you can feel somewhat abandoned or forgotten or left behind. Like it's just you on the ground in this conflict. Like where is the humanity? Where is the support? Why is this happening every night, every day? You know, where is the world how is the world letting this happen? So to be able to have that recognition for them was huge through the BAFTA. So me taking over there it brought so much joy and hope and inspiration for them to see it in real life on their turf, to be able to hold it was monumental. So being able to go and do that as a mission, to be able to go into Ukraine and to do those things and to meet those people, allowed for them to feel like there is something beyond just their day-to-day experience of this war, and to be able to feel that there are people out there who stands with them and sees them.
Wow. I feel like it's you said something before we started recording where you're like, oh, this is going to be a ride. And I feel like it definitely has. And I feel like, I don't know, like a part of me was like, oh, I feel like I want to ask her. I want to do something to end up on a higher, note. But like this, I'd say this is high enough because, you were talking about how, we've got, no, in the respect of like, we've already got, uh, we've got to see, um, how the journey of making the movie, it's been going, and the hope that it brought up, and almost I'd say even a bit of, I know that Ukrainian people are very proud people, and I feel like that, to have that sense of, again, to have something to add up to that pride by winning the award is definitely something that I can see why it would be received in such a beautiful way, because it's cool. Like it's such an amazing achievement.
Thank you.
Um,
I do have
now,
something positive to give to you, I guess, actually, just to kind of like, if you want to end on something a little bit more uplifting and more positive in some ways.
again, I do feel like it's been very uplifting because again, like if you obviously it's very meaningful. So I think it's actually much nicer. than just like, oh, here's a happy ending. You know, this is actually a real happy ending, or like it's even a real happy little checkpoint on the journey, because obviously there's still a fight that's going on. There is still a war that, you know, will hopefully be ended soon, and with,
Yeah.
you know, Ukraine as on the winning side. Um, but
Yeah.
now I guess sorry, go on.
No, I was just like, I think checkpoint is a fantastic analogy to use because, you know, just thinking about like if I was to give something to you and your listeners, especially when you touch on this on the topic of checkpoint, I think all of this all of this has come from a film that has come from a group of people that's come from a starting point where, you know, you, a journey from which you start from. And I think one of the things that I would say to you and your listeners is that, you know, this comes from you, you know, like as much as you believe and you push and you try to kind of graft, and people will tell you that this is silly, people will tell you that you know, it's just a short film. Like, what do you expect to do with it? Like, people aren't gonna like, what you think? What, you're gonna change the world? Like, what? Like, okay, you know, people are gonna care, or like, oh, you want to do film? Like, you and everybody else, dude. You're like, oh, you know, you want to win an award? Oh, wow, yeah, you and everybody else. Like, you know, you want to this, that, and the other. You want to do this, or I think the biggest, if like to kind of summarize all this whole journey to this point is that like if you have that sense of if you have the ability to kind of have inspiration, hope, and a wonder, and to have a dream in this way, and to keep chasing it 15 years, 10 years, 5 years, 2 years, you know, even now with this film as well, like going to Ukraine, working with the Ukrainian government, trying to use this film in a way that does some sort of good for the people of Ukraine, to try and give people empathy for the people, for the civilians. You know, this isn't the film isn't picking a side. You know, the film doesn't choose to side with Ukraine or with Russia, even though the film is Ukrainian. It has clear this like perspective, but it shows a civilian perspective. It shows a human element, and I think deep down for all of us, if we understand that what you do has impact and meaning, that you as a person can do these things, I think you like that what you can achieve is incredible if you think it and feel it.
Beautiful. And look, I have to say it once again. I appreciate you so much. Honestly, I appreciate you for taking the time to do this with me. And before we wrap it up, I guess as a one last question, if you can share, if there is anything that people should keep an eye out um, from you, anything you'd like to announce, or if, and obviously also where do people find most of your work? Basically, it's time to, I guess, the plugging, you know, time
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
of the
Yeah. So
podcast.
you can. I think the best way to keep in touch or to kind of see what we're up to is if you catch me on Instagram, it's at hoozeer.film. So that's HOOZEER dot film. The film art, the rock paper scissors. You can keep again also keep track of it on Instagram and rps.film. And yeah, I mean, we've still got a lot of life in the film at the minute. You know, we've still got there's a lot of release to go through with the film. We're pushing it into the US. You know, there's a whole secondary awards circuit that we're looking at as well, which I don't really want to talk too much about it because I don't want to jinx it. But you know, there's more than just the BAFTAs out there in the world. I'm sure you're well aware. So you know, we're trying to push the film into the American market and to try and use the film to do some good and teach people what empathy looks like for civilians caught in a conflict. So, you know, check us out. You can also, this is going to sound so like, I've actually not said this out loud before, but You can also Google us. You can Google me. You can Google the film, and you'll see lots of like different like reviews and outlets, and you can keep track of it in that way.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. For anyone who want to do that, I will put a link in the bio of your socials and the website of the movie. And you sound for someone who's never said that before, the Google Me part. You said it in a wonderful way, I have to say. So you like a natural.
Oh, thank you. It feels like sort of, if you're like drunk at a nightclub or something, you like it feels like
Yeah.
someone saying that. Do you
I'd
know
say
who I
not in
am?
this
You should Google me.
circumstance. Yeah, I'd say in
Oh,
this
I
in
never
this
wanted.
circumstance, it's beautiful. I think in this
Yeah.
circumstance, like, look, just Google it. If you don't trust me, it's good. Google it. See what everybody else says. And I think that's a beautiful way to say it. Thank you so much, brother. Look after yourself and all the best.
Thank you so much, Levi. It's been a real pleasure.
All right. So, what do you think? Was it good? Was it what you hoped for? Was it better? Was it worse? I think it was brilliant. I love this conversation a lot, and I hope you loved it too. And I hope you again check out Hayder's work, um, and I think that's it from me for this week. I'm working on a few things um, that I'm yet to announce, and I'm trying to put some shows together for the end of the year and beginning of the next one. So if you want to stay updated, check out my socials. I've also have put Hader's social um, in the bio of the podcast in the summary. That's it from me. Yeah. Hopefully, we speak again next week, and I'll be in better health. I wish everyone listening good health as well. And from me, Pickle and Sarma, same as usual. From me, Pickle and Sarma. Until next week, stay skillful and goodbye.